This is the Bizgnus podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
After getting through 2020, we all might be given some slack if we feel things are still spinning out of control. But there is a way to come to grips with such feelings. Author Julie Potiker says it's mindfulness because, as she puts it, what you think changes your brain, and it doesn't stop until you're dead. She joins us in this Bizgnus podcast. Let's start, if you don't mind, by telling our listeners and our viewers a little bit about yourself. How did you get here? You are what, a retired lawyer, or you're too young to retire?
I call myself a recovering attorney.
Well, how did you get to that point?
Actually, many years ago, when my now grown kids were adolescents, I was so completely stressed out that the wrong words were coming out of my mouth. And I went to see a neurologist to rule out a brain issue. And he recommended mindfulness because it was actually too much stress that was making my speech wacky.
That's astounding.
I know.
Well, tell our listeners and viewers, what is mindfulness? What is it? It seems like a fairly simple word, but when you start thinking about it, what the heck are you talking about?
Well, it's a great practice. It's been around thousands and thousands of years, but here in the West, it's completely evidence-based and scientifically documented. And basically, it's paying attention to what you're doing when you're doing it without judgment. So I'm talking to you right now. I'm really paying attention. I'm not thinking about what I need to do next. I'm not thinking about the conversation I had a half hour ago. So we're wired to worry and ruminate because we're primates. All of our brains are wired that way. It's not our fault. It's fine. That's why we're still here. We haven't been killed by a saber-toothed tiger. So paying attention to what you're doing when you're doing it gives your brain a break. And that's what mindfulness is.
I'm sorry, but don't we do that all the time anyway?
No, we don't.
Well,
We don't.
give us an example of being mindful. Do you go into some sort of trance-like state?
No, you don't. Mindfulness in daily life activities can be done by just paying attention to what you're doing when you're doing it. So if you're cooking, don't be thinking about your to-do list. Really mindfully chop your vegetables for your soup. So you're looking at them, you're feeling the knife in your hand, you're listening to the sound it makes. When you put your mirepoix in your pot with your oil and you're stirring it, notice the aromas. Don't be thinking, I need to do the laundry. I need to empty the dishwasher. I had a horrible conversation with my spouse, and here's the response I want to make the next time I see him. You know what I mean? Just be with the pot of soup. That's mindfulness.
It sounds almost hippie-like. How do you apply that to, if you're not cooking soup, how do you apply that in the business world, for example, where the average manager is putting out a fire every other minute, it seems?
Yeah, so putting out a fire every other minute, you just need to be with that fire and then pause and be with that next fire and then pause and then be with that next fire. And there's all kinds of mindfulness in business tricks and tips that can ground you. Similarly with healthcare workers on the front line right now. You know, there's all kinds of ways where you can drop your awareness to the soles of your feet to give your brain a break. You can pick up a stone on your desk if you're a manager at work, or even if you're a worker at work, and just take a few moments to notice the texture, the temperature, the ridges, wonder where this stone is from, and all of that calms you down. And then you're ready for your next thing. Your mind is more settled. It's not blank by any means. It's concentrated on something.
Now, obviously, you've managed to put words together since you learned mindfulness. How long did it take you to reach that state of getting away from the tension and becoming more in control?
There's so many studies about this. For me personally, I took an 8-week class, and maybe 2 or 3 weeks in, I noticed a very sizable change in my central nervous system, which I wouldn't have back then understood what was going on. But after that, I took many, many courses in brain science, neuroscience. I became an experience dependent neuroplasticity trainer. I know. I see your face. Your listeners won't see our faces, but I just saw your face, so I can imagine people going, "Well, what?" Um,
Well, I
so
can add that for our listeners. What?
yeah, so that's taking in positive mental state. So noticing when you're feeling good for whatever reason, you're seeing the sunset, or you're talking to your kids on FaceTime, or you just got a promotion, or whatever it is, taking that in for just a few breaths pushes that good feeling to an actual neural trait, because what wires together fires together in our brains. It's super duper cool. So that's a beautiful sunset. What's for dinner? That's a beautiful sunset. Wow. Look at those colors. Ooh, I feel this expansive feeling in my body. Boom, you've done it. You've created a happy bridge in your brain.
So I understand that. But let's say you are pressed for all these other demands on your time. Do you just kind of ignore them in some manner to do this?
No, it doesn't take long. You just have to set an intention to do it. It really doesn't take long. That's just a few, I think they said 12 seconds or something. I would have to check. But I mean, it's a few breaths. It's not like 5 minutes or something. And the more you do that on and off during the day, you're rewiring positive, happy, wonderful things in your brain, which prunes out some of the negative stuff in your brain, which we have because we have a negativity bias because we're primates. So some of this brain science stuff is so super cool. And if people understand it and set an intention to do it, they can have a happier life.
What has been the reaction to you when you were an attorney doing this, your coworkers, as they saw you developing this practice? What happened?
Okay, so I have to come clean on that. I'm a recovering attorney of decades. So I stopped practicing law when I think it was my second kid, when I had, well, I stopped practicing law at a firm after I had my first kid, who's now 30. And then we moved to California and had two more kids. They're twins. And I went into the public service sector. So I was working in nonprofits, doing board work, that kind of thing. So I was using my legal, but I wasn't a practicing attorney. And what the response was from everyone across the board was, wow, Julie seems happier. Julie seems more content. Julie seems, I don't know if it would be, I mean, I was always super nice, so it wouldn't be nicer, but my management style really improved. I used to be a little bit impatient on process, especially when I was running boards, like as the president or chairman of the board. I would be a little bit impatient because I would want things to happen quicker. And so my management style changed to a much more inclusive, process oriented, like the stuff that the books say you ought to do, which I didn't have the patience to do. I got a lot more patient.
That sounds like a pretty good thing to be. And I would imagine your coworkers, whether they're volunteer groups or others, would probably benefit from that. Do you see that rubbing off, or did you have to send them to that 8-week course wherever you took it?
No, I didn't have to send anybody anywhere. I just, I would encourage people to meditate. I would encourage people to keep a gratitude practice because, as Pollyanna as that sounds, there's an unbelievably strong science to that. where if you write down, what am I grateful for today? What did I enjoy today every night in a journal? And that journal you don't use to complain about other things. It's only for positive things that you're what where attention goes, energy flows, you're rewiring your brain, you create a positive feedback loop. And that kind of trickles down or bleeds out or however you want to think about that into all areas of your life, your work life, your relationships, healthy habit keeping. I mean, that's solid science.
It sounds like all of this is related one to the other, correct?
It is. And you know what? Like, I'm looking at you and you're looking at me, and we're mirroring each other's neurons. So you know how like anger and anxiety are sort of contagious? You know it, but you don't know why. It's because we're energetic beings and we're mirroring each other's neurons.
Now, Julie, you've put a lot of this into a book. Tell
I
us
did.
tell us the name of the book and a little bit more about it.
It's called Life Falls Apart, but You Don't Have to. Mindful Methods for Staying Calm in the Midst of Chaos. Now, I have to tell you, I'm in the middle of writing my second book, which is Life Fell Apart, because we just went through and are still going through one of the most horrific, unprecedented culmination of many events in our lifetime, especially in America. I mean, globally, we're suffering the pandemic and climate crisis, but here in America, we've got our plate really full with societal issues. So I'm writing another book.
It sounds like you have a lot of takers for that other book,
Yeah,
to say the least.
we could all use to calm down so that we can step up and help. And that's what I'm going to be teaching. How can we calm our nervous system so that we can be effective advocates for change?
Do you have a tip for our audience?
I do. It's called Snap. So imagine snapping your fingers. Soothing touch is the S, because when you place your hands on your body, whether it's your heart or your cheeks or your belly or holding your arms, when you place your hands with intention for soothing, you release hormones, oxytocin and endorphins that calm your nervous system. So soothing touch is the first one when you feel anger or anxiety arise. And I can't say how much anger and anxiety is going on right now in America. It's off the charts, right? So soothing touch is first. The N is naming the emotion. So this is mindfulness. I can see you looking at me like, what? This is mindfulness. I feel anger. I'm not anger, but I feel it. I feel anxiety. Where do I feel that? Oh, it's in my stomach. I got a headache. I feel like puking, whatever it is, naming it. Because when just naming it calms you down, it helps your prefrontal cortex come online, your thinking part of your brain, so that you can manage whatever it is, right? Deal with it. So then the third thing of SNAP is the A, apply appropriate mindful methods tools. And then I have my whole toolbox developed over the years from being a mindful self-compassion teacher and also from being an experience dependent neuroplasticity trainer, right? And all the other courses that I'm trained to teach. There's a list of them. So that's a toolbox in the book that people can choose from for the A. And then the P is proceed with self-compassion, which is huge. Don't beat yourself up. You're doing the best you can. Pat yourself on the back for how well you're actually managing. And then tomorrow's another day. So snap.
Pretty good, but trying to get people to remember those pieces of advice during times of great emotion is going to be pretty hard.
That's where the practice comes in. Because once you practice for a number of weeks, it'll become second habit. It'll become a habit let's say you practice for 3 weeks. They usually say 3 weeks is how you change a behavior and make a habit. And then some of the mindful methods in the toolbox will be things that work better for you. Some of the things you just won't like. So you'll just have a few go-tos. You won't have to look at the list once you're practicing a lot.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine somebody in an emotional state ripping the list out of their pocket and saying, "Oh, it's upside down now. I can't read it."
Well, they might have to do that the first few times, but then they'll remember.
How has this changed your life? You've been at this now for a decade or more.
Yeah.
If you look at Julie today and Julie 15 years ago,
Oh my God. So I actually was suffering clinical depression, and there were certain times where I thought, you know what, this is just too painful to stick around. I think I'm going to chuck it. And then I wouldn't, because I didn't want to mess my kids up. So, or my husband, or my parents when they were alive. So it wasn't that I thought life was worth living. It was that I didn't want to mess them up. And that's why I stayed on the planet. Now I'm a happy person. I'm happy. I rewired my brain. I'm productive. I'm helping people. I'm teaching constantly. I haven't missed a week during the pandemic of holding this group of fantastic humans, diverse people that didn't know each other. We're on Zoom every week. I'm teaching them a guided meditation. Then we're doing, unpacking it and seeing how everybody's doing it. People have lost spouses, have lost parents. And being of service is another one of the tools, because it makes you feel good.
Julie, where can our viewers and listeners get more information? You might have a website, perhaps.
I like your questions. Of course, I have a website and a podcast that's free. The website has also kind of a library in it, which is great for people because I'm a nerd. So they'll get everybody else's books that I think are wonderful to read, and everybody else's newsletters. So the website is mindfulmethodsforlife.com. So it's just how it sounds, but the 4 is FOR, mindfulmethodsforlife.com. And the podcast is Balanced Mind with Julie Potiker, and there's tons of wonderful guided meditations on there. And actually, on the website, if you've never meditated and you think it's weird, there's little videos that you can keep your eyes open and watch, kind of nature, chill out, groovy things with the guided meditation behind it, underneath it, however.
Sounds pretty cool. What would you like to add that I just haven't been bright enough to ask you?
I just want people to try it. It's not hard, and there's so much bang for your buck. And it's not weird. It's not woo-woo. It's evidence-based. I mean, I teach lawyers. I've taught law students. I'm skeptical. I'm not chanting. I'm not using crystals, which is not to say that those things don't have a place. I just don't, I'm teaching what is science based.
You've been watching the Bizgnus podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@bizgnus.com. Thanks for watching.